Reading with your kids.
Hola, niha, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni miliwanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted and so honored that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Good Pod, Podcast Addict, Himalaya, Ghana, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is Leslie Gang. She's here to celebrate, but family is forever. And also tell us all about Tindy's Libraries. Before we invite Leslie into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by April Cox and Self-Publishing Made Simple. We know that you love reading to your kids. But what if you are a new or aspiring author? You've also been writing for kids. You know, it's no easy task to get your book published. But what if it could be? You can avoid the shoebox of rejection letters and get the help you need to publish your dream book now. Imagine holding your own book in your hands in a matter of just a few months. It is possible with help from April Cox and Self-Publishing Made Simple. April has helped thousands of authors with her programs and services and has a special offer going on right now. Get a free consult by visiting her website at www.selfpubmadesimple.com. And before long, we could be talking about your book right here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Joining us right now from Long Island in New York, our guest is here today to celebrate a brand new children's picture book. It's called But Family is Forever. Please welcome to the show, Leslie Gang. Hey, Leslie, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you on. I believe family is forever. We're just talking about a member of my extended family. Tell us about this book, please.
So, I always loved the book, I'll Love You Forever. It's kind of been a staple. Many of you may know it. It starts with the mother taking care of her son as he gets older, and it kind of ends with the son then taking care of his mother. And I always loved that book. And part of what I do and what inspired me is I run a nonprofit and we donate children's books all over the world. And over the pandemic, during lockdown, when, really that time when no one was leaving their homes, I was able to package hundreds of boxes of books a week because I was home and, my work was remote. And after packaging what seemed like thousands, 30,000 books, and I looked at my husband and I said, I think it's time. I'm going to write something. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to write something. And I've always loved to rhyme. If I ever have the opportunity to write a poem or a thank you note or a speech, it will always be rhyming. I work in a school full time and teachers will come to me and say, we're working on a project. We need you to come in and help us rhyme it. It's just what I love to do. So I knew the book had to be in rhyme. And then I sat down to think about, well, what am I going to write about? Here I am and, during lockdown, sitting at my computer, thousands of books around my living room. And I always say to my children, I have two children. My daughter is 9 and my son is 7. And I always say to them when they're arguing, stop. It's not important. Do you remember what's important? Family. This is your family. And that's the most important thing. So stop arguing with him about who used the iPad longer or how many minutes more your sibling got to use TV. So I knew it had to be about family. And then I just started. I started writing and the process only took me a few hours. And then I spent the next several weeks, going over it again and again and again. And yeah, I'm very excited about it. I also knew that when it came to illustrating the book, I wanted to represent all different sorts of families. A little bit about my background. I grew up in a traditional Jewish community where, there was like a cookie cutter family. This is what you need to look like. This is what families are. It is what it is. And I grew up with a single mother. in an apartment where many people in the community lived in very large homes. And anytime, there was a conversation about what are you and your family doing? What's mom and dad doing? Father's Day. You always felt a little bit, that's sensitive. And always I feel that way. And I teach my kids, not everyone's family looks the same. And it doesn't matter, if they're raised by a grandmother, a cousin, two dads, two moms, if their skin colors are different, as long as they're family and they love each other. So when I was looking for an illustrator, I had a goal to hopefully give almost any child, of course not all, because there's so many different, family dynamics, but to give many children a representation of themselves in their book. So what you will find is while the book has rhyme and repetition, every set of pages is a different family dynamic. And that to me was very important because again, I was raised where everyone was almost the same, and going to college, I was kind of like in culture shock, kind of out of my shell, and realized there was a whole world out there that I was never exposed to. Kind of catching up on those first 18 years of my life in my adult life. So that's my goal, to remind people that family, and by the way, they might not be blood relatives, your family. It's whatever you consider your family. That's what matters. The people who will guide you and love you and support you. And not everyone looks the same in their family and in their home.
Yeah. One of the things that I just love about my family here, our Thanksgivings are amazing because before the pandemic, we would have 30 people over the house and there'd be 5 different languages being spoken at the time, and all sorts of food and recipes from all over the world. And it really is beautiful. And I think that's such an important lesson to teach kids, is that family, this family that we're born into, and then there are people that we choose to make family. And that's such a valuable lesson for kids, I think. You have this nonprofit, and it's really exciting. I definitely want to delve into it, but how did the shift from being this nonprofit dynamo and getting books out all over the world to becoming an author, did that take a giant kind of mind shift for you?
So a big part of it is when I see some of the books that are published, when you go to the museum, the Met or wherever museum, and you see like the splatter and you go home and you're like, I could do that. It's splatter, and they're selling it for millions of dollars. That kind of gave me the motivation. I'm reading books and some of them are fabulous and some of them are, novice writers, and I said, I could do this. And, my passion also has been writing. Always. I love to write. And I've entered poetry contests in the past, writing contests. So I feel like being in the nonprofit world for children's literature, partnering with children's authors, speaking to them, seeing their passion, seeing the back end of how they get their books published and sold and marketed and in the hands of children, that kind of all gave me this plethora of resources really to move forward with this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Now, your nonprofit is really, really interesting. I understand that all the profit that you're going to be getting from But Family is Forever is going to go to help fund your nonprofit. Tell us a little bit about this project. It sounds fascinating.
So I'll kind of try to talk about it in a nutshell. About 4 years ago, I've always been in the marketing, public relations, communications field of the education system. So I worked at a private school in the area, and my job was marketing, admissions, and recruitment. So I knew the teachers, the parents, the students, board members, because I was kind of all over. And one of our dynamo teachers, and I'll throw you back to the 90s of Michelle Pfeiffer and Dangerous Minds. Mm-hmm. This was Hindi Krinsky. She was a young, vibrant, unique, bubbly literature teacher in high school that brought in anyone, whether they were struggling in school or they were at the top of their class. They were fascinated by her. And she and I had only a professional relationship. I kind of knew that when I had a recruitment event, Hindi had to be at the forefront. Somehow parents had to meet her at, when checking out the institution, and they'd fall in love and there'd be no going back. And that was my relationship with her. I knew her husband, David, simply from the admissions perspective. They had 5 children, so I worked with them on the process and any business office type, communication. But that was really very much it. In the summer of 2018, I received a phone call from David that Hindi very tragically passed away from a complication of Crohn's. She, thought she had a terrible stomach ache. They went to the hospital. Unfortunately, there was nothing they could do at that point. She left behind 5 kids, triplets who were 8, a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. So now where do I come in, right? So my role in the school was, again, the communications person. So all of a sudden I'm getting phone calls and text messages and emails. I heard she passed away. I want to give something, whether it was parents that said, I want to make a donation, whether it was the local vendor who does karate that says, tell them I'm offering free karate for this semester for all 5 kids, whether it was the PTA that wanted to, run, what we call a meal train for 6 months. So he wouldn't have to worry about cooking. And they were all throwing them at me because I was the, representation of the school. So I started making lists and lists and lists and lists. And I called them and I said, I know you're grieving. I'm not here to overwhelm you. I'm preparing lists of everything the community has to offer you. I'm leaving it for you. We'll have it shared on Excel. If you need anything from anyone on that list, you know where to find me. And we developed a relationship because David really needed a lot of babysitting in the beginning because now he's 1 on 5. Mm-hmm. He needed food and carpool rides, So we developed a friendship. And a few months later, the principal of the school called me and asked for me to brainstorm with her what we can do on campus to honor Hindi's legacy. Because now you have 3 third graders who in August were just like given this terrible thing they have to try to process now, and they got to go to school like everything is okay. So we decided to build a freestanding little free library. Mm-hmm. We spoke with David. We hired a custodian to build it. I had a friend of mine who's an artist sit with David, sit with the children, learn about Hindi, and design it in a way that really embodied their family, Hindi's favorite books, the children's favorite books. And we had an opening ceremony in the late fall of 18. We asked everyone in the grade, mind you, we were talking 80 people, bring 1 book. Let's all feel like we're part of this. It was a beautiful event, very meaningful, and the day was over. 3 weeks later, I get a phone call from the principal, and the phone call went something along the lines of, how you doing? Hope all's good. Do you know why there are 500 books in my office and I can't walk? And I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea, but we'll pick them up tonight. I'm so sorry. We only asked them to bring 1. The game of broken telephone came about and people, they took books. Oh, I have children's books. And David and I are now coming home to both of our houses with bags of children's books because in a tight-knit community, one person talks, the next person hears what they want to hear and moves on. We regrouped. We very quickly tried to go through the books, donate them to a local food pantry. We found a local nonprofit that deals with Long Island homeless children. We're like, okay, that was so lovely. Wonderful. And then we turn around and there are just more books all the time. It's kind of like that I Love Lucy scene with chocolate. Mm-hmm. We're trying and they're just coming and we didn't know what to do. So we regrouped again and said, something's happening here. People save their books, whether they're 30, 40, 70, 80. There's something about books. They're not throwing them out but they don't want them for themselves, but they're keeping them. Mm-hmm. So we then became this outlet for people to, I guess, book it forward is kind of the term we think of. They have this connection because I really find, and as a parent, books are memories. You take a book you remember reading to your child every night at dinner, and then that child mispronounced that one word and you'll remember that. It's important to you. It's not like an old pair of shoes or a coat, Mm-hmm. And parents hold on to them because they're memories. But we realize they hold on because they don't know who to give those memories to. Mm. So it's been really rewarding for us to receive it. Now, fast forward almost 4 years later, we've donated almost 300,000 books. We're partnered with about 700 nonprofits or services that support families in need with children who cannot afford books or have special needs or illnesses. And we're international as well. And it's wild. I mean, that's the only way I can describe it. We have no staff. We have no office. We both work full time raising our own families. It's just prioritizing and organizing our lives. And it's been incredible. And certainly we roll with the punches. So this book was like the next step. I decided, let me throw in one of these books in every box we ship and let's make money off of it for the nonprofit.
That's a fascinating, wonderful story. I loved your observation about people not wanting to throw away books. I'm the same way. In fact, you were mentioning I Love You Forever. We still have the book that I'm sure is tear-stained because when I was reading that to my daughter and my son 28 years ago, I could never get through it without shedding a tear.
Right.
And I'm never going to throw that book away. I'll give it to probably the first grandchild that comes into our lives, and read it to them. But what a magnificent way to honor your friend, to just pass on her love of literature and story to people all over the world. I don't know where you mentioned you come from a Jewish family. Do you ever imagine that your friend may be looking down on this and smiling, knowing that she inspired this worldwide love affair?
I hope so. I tell David all the time, I hope his children feel that also, that their mom's legacy is continuing. There are 5 of them and hopefully they'll have large families. And this woman who inspired not only her 5 children, but hundreds of people, anyone who we meet that has known her for 5 minutes or 10 years, they felt that energy. So hopefully they feel that, mom, they call them in their house mom books. Oh, Leslie's here. You're going to work on mom books. That's how they kind of talk about it. That's what's important to me, that the children and the family and the legacy continues by not only those who didn't know her, but certainly those that felt that loss and for many generations to come.
Yeah. And I'm imagining too, what a great inspiration for kids who are picking up those books. And you mentioned that you initially went to homeless shelters, trying to break that cycle of poverty and homelessness through reading, through education, through building that bond between parent and child. Hopefully they'll be inspired to learn through your friend's legacy.
100%. I read a statistic early on, and it really blew my mind. In a middle-class family, typical, average, 13 books available to one child. Okay. Low-income family, 1 book, 300 children. I mean, and then I look at my garage and our storage unit. It's really, it blows our mind. And every time, we feel like we can't do it anymore and we have no staff, like I said, no this, no that. Can we go on? And then you get that email or the photo of the, child with a note from the recipient or the nonprofit we sent them to. And you're like, we're good. We got to move on. Yeah. We got to keep going. It's incredible how 1 book, that means 1 child is now a reader and now feels empowered and strong and that they matter. Even if that's, like I said, 1 book, it doesn't matter. We're not counting. We're not doing a match. 30 books equals this. No. Every book is going to a reader. So whether someone drops off in a shopping bag 4 books or I have a Girl Scout troop doing, a drive that raises and collects 2,000 books, they're all amazing because those are going to readers and children who have it really rough. So this feels like, oh my God, this is mine. Someone thought of me. I can now read this and I could do something and I can become something and I matter. And that's important.
Yeah. And it's that was an interesting and also horrifying statistic that you shared. One of the statistics, it's easy for me to say sometimes, one of the stats that I learned early on in producing this podcast was that having as few as 20 books in a house, just the child's chances of going to university are just multiplied beyond measure. It's just the chances that they'll go to to college are so much more than the kid with just one book or no books. And one of the things that I'm torn with sometimes is here in the show, that another stat that we've shared is that, a kid who is read to every night for 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, will go to school hearing between 800,000 and 1 million more words than their peers who were not read to. And that advantage never changes. It's not like by the third grade, the other kids will catch up. There's always going to be that gap. It's like, what can we do? Are we supposed to tell the families that are reading to their kids to stop? No, that's not the answer. I love that you are doing something to help close that gap for many, many families, not only here, but all around the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really heartwarming to hear from recipients, because we're in New York and we're shipping, and I try to keep those relationships alive and cultivate them and be in constant contact with them. And, they say that, whether it's a Title I school or a pediatric clinic in a low-income area, they're really, we're just the matchmakers, I say. We're taking the books from the donor and giving them to the recipient. We're just giving them the tools to help those kids succeed. So it really is a team effort between everyone. The person who dropped off one book, our volunteer group that, packages, and of course, the nonprofits really sitting with those children and giving them those resources.
Yeah. Well, I know people are going to want to know how they can get involved. So before I ask you where we can go to find out about your book, how can people get involved? Obviously, people are able to donate books, but I'm sure that there's some expenses. I know you said you have shared books with folks in India. I know that it is incredibly expensive to ship things to India. There must be a need for some funding as well.
Yes, so totally. Every box we ship costs us $25, and we don't charge the recipient anything. You get that email sometimes, you're like, free books, open now. I have to kind of write like, it's not spam, I promise. Because, in the world, nothing is free. But our books are. We just ask for a photo in return, so our financial or book donors really see what we're doing. Mm-hmm. Funding is always really appreciative, especially because we're still on the back end, really tiny, still growing, trying to, get our feet wet. We've partnered with a wonderful company called GiveBackBox.com. What they've allowed is for book donors like yourselves listening, you could fill up any box, any size, any weight. If you could get books in a wardrobe box and that wardrobe box will not break, that box will cost you $15. Now, for anyone who shipped anything, that's like really cheap because our box that's 30 pounds, that's, 10 by 15, that's already $25. There's no weight limit. There's no size limit. It just needs to be a cardboard box that can travel well. And we've gotten a lot of people donating their home library books through that method because it is one of the most affordable ways. And then we're doing something really interesting, which will cost people no money. We're working with individuals and groups, schools, Girl Scouts, Rotaries, all over the country. We are facilitating a book drive in their community. So if you want to run a book drive, let's say in Boston, I would sit with you. I would give you the tools. I would tell you where we need to partner, a local school, a local church, who is going to be collecting the books and where are they being dropped off. And then we work together to find a recipient in your neck of the woods that somehow those books can be transported. So we're breaking out into these, what we call HL hubs, Hindi's Libraries hubs, and we're trying to give people that power to do exactly what we're doing in their hometowns. We've partnered with families looking to do community service, Rotaries, Girl Scouts. I'm working with a family in Ohio now. I've worked all over, across the country and with a family in California, and we partnered them with a local school. We've partnered with a children's author, who we helped to get new books for a children's hospital in Texas. And if I tell you I went on social media, stalked a few groups in Texas and joined them and pretended I lived there, and then asked them, does anyone have a pickup truck to do something really worthwhile? And some gentleman with a pickup truck went to the author's house, took all the books, and she followed him and they drove to the hospital. That was it. It was just people working together to do good. And it's so easy. And I think nowadays, and you tell me what you think, you kind of are told it's who you know, how much money do you have in the bank? That's what you need. I mean, that's great, but not really. Mm-hmm. If you have that urge and that perseverance and you want to do something, especially if it's something good to help, there's a way. You might need a little bit of funding at some point down the line, which we do, and I know, but it's not stopping us. We're still doing it. We're still moving forward and partnering with people across the country to help them figure out how to do this in their town, supporting children locally to them that don't have access to books. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm. And by helping kids in your community, by helping kids all over the world get access to books, you're helping them elevate themselves. It's an investment in a better world. And I can't think of a better way to do that than by sharing books, sharing your gently used books, maybe donating some money. So where can people go to connect with you, to send a donation of books or to send a donation of cash or to just partner with you to get something going in their own local community?
So I have access to all social media on my phone. Our nonprofit name is Hindy's Libraries, plural. Put it into Google, stick it onto Facebook, Instagram. You'll find us. Our website is Hindy's Libraries, plural.org. There's contact methods there. And we try to be very responsive. I mean, within 2 hours at most. It's all about building community and working together. And that's what I love the most, is figuring out how we can collaborate.
Yeah. And if people specifically wanted to find out about But Family is Forever?
So my book, which just came in the mail today. Oh, you can't even see it because it's blurry. Oh, no. It just came in the mail today, so I'm very excited. It's available on Amazon. It's called But Family is Forever by Leslie Gang. It's $12.99. Of course, the publisher does take, their fee from it, but whatever comes to me, I am giving to Hindy's Libraries. So I'd love the support. I'd love for you to check it out and read it and reach out, and let's work together to do some good.
We've had a really inspiring time speaking to the author of But Family is Forever. She's also the driving force behind Hindy's Libraries, Leslie Gang. Leslie, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Anita Saxena. She'll be here to celebrate Double Axel or Nothing. It's her debut middle grade novel, and you're going to love meeting her. Gives us a look into the world of competitive figure skating, a world that most of us have watched on TV, but really haven't had a peek backstage at. That's the next episode of the podcast. Hey, want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, want to start by thanking our guest, Leslie Gang. Please be sure to check out But Family is Forever, and also check out Hindy's Libraries. What a wonderful, wonderful way, wonderful tribute and memorial to a wonderful person. Also want to thank our sponsor, Self-Publishing Made Simple. April Cox is great service. She can help you become a published author and maybe be a guest here on the podcast in just a matter of months. Please be sure to check out her website, www.selfpubmadesimple.com. Also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Skylar Strauss. Want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.